Well, thank you for the opportunity, Ron and Angel Beat. I'm happy to be here. As Ron mentioned, I am from the cloud security team here at Cisco. I'm talking to you virtually from the Bay Area, in case you want to place where I am. And I work in the product management team. I'm a group product manager focusing on DNS security within the cloud security portfolio. And today, as Ron mentioned, we're going to talk about securing cloud adoption for remote workers. There's a lot of interest in this area. We'll talk about the Cisco Umbrella solution, but hopefully you walk away from the next 25, 30 minutes learning something about not only statistics and our new reality in terms of remote and branch office locations moving to direct internet access, but also how to best secure that, what those transitions and trends look like. So we'll share some statistics from this very interesting year that we are in, but also kind of look at how times have been changing for quite some time and what that means in terms of hopefully saving you time and money and resources. So I will transition. This is essentially our agenda. And what I'd love for you to all think about as you think about and look at the slides here is how is the use of SaaS applications prolific in the environment that you are in? Are your remote and branch offices moving to DIA or direct internet access instead of traditionally backhauling to a data center first? Are you considering the software-defined wide area network transitions that are also taking place to enable this DIA transformation? And ultimately, how does security fit in all this? With limited staff, limited time, limited bandwidth, frankly, how do we solve these problems and the exposures and endpoints that we are all dealing with? So we'll talk about, as part of this, the secure internet gateway solution like Cisco Umbrella and how we hopefully can help you. Cisco Umbrella integrates multiple security services. So we'll touch on DNS layer security, which I realized in the last presentation, we talked a little bit about domain name systems as well. It's great. We'll talk a little bit about firewalls, secure web gateways, cloud access security broker, CASB, and even more. And ultimately how we can offer that protection from a single platform that helps you to reduce time, money, and the resources that you need. For those of you who are on Twitter, you've probably seen a meme recently in the last week or so that shows this was me then and this is me now, something along those lines. And sometimes you see a founder hustling in an office and working with their staff and how that business perhaps has transformed. You see a couple with a picture of them before they were married and now they have kids, etc. You get the idea. This particular slide reminds me of that, to be honest. It's got a bit of the Pareto principle here as well with the 80-20 rule. But what's interesting is this is all this year, right? And times have changed. And this is not just a comment on COVID or the global pandemic that we are in, but really if you look at earlier this year, back in March, which we'll focus on for the next few slides, there was less internet traffic and more internal traffic. And that has really flipped, right? That has changed perhaps forever. Whenever internet traffic exceeds internal traffic, backhauling does not make sense for two reasons: cost and performance issues. And so we are living through this, we are seeing this with the transformation of remote workers. And as that has doubled since the end of March, we've seen that as well. So let's share some interesting statistics about this, if you don't mind, the great migration as this slide talks about. And you might be wondering, how did we come up with these stats here? Well, not only are they prevalent, but what we did is we looked internally within our own systems. So we ran, because we run traffic through the Cisco Umbrella DNS servers, we actually take a look at the snapshot of activity. By the way, we process over 200 billion requests per day across 100 million users across 160 countries. And so we have a distinct position here. But in particular, we looked at distinct IP addresses and sorted them into remote and office groupings. So the following chart that you see in front of you shows the trend for the total number of IP addresses known to be remote each week. And as you can see, and we lived through this, early March, not so much, kept increasing towards the end of March, 2x, right? So 2x in terms of those number of IPs known to be remote in that span of the month. As a result, many IT teams working double time setting up remote workers, and this resulted in thin resources and ultimately a lot of new remote connections, which Why does that matter? More endpoints gives attackers a new playground to target. So let's take that a little bit further as we look at this particular chart, which is equally as interesting. What's interesting about this is there's no mention of the month March. So what happened here? This is the percentage of malicious pandemic domains that climb, fell, and is starting to climb again. So you might ask yourself, why is this interesting, Rohit? Well, despite the fact that there was that marked increase in March, as we just referred to, late April appears to be the point where the most malicious activity actually took place. During this time, the percentage of domains blocked as malicious frequently crossed 50%, as you can see from the y-axis here, even peaking as high as 75%. And even though that declined as we headed into spring and summer months, it's still pretty daunting in terms of that malicious activity. As a result, you see traffic to phishing domains like COVID also continue to increase. This particular statistics around 71x increase is actually between January 1st of this year through September 7th of this year. It's a huge amount of growth, and there's really no signs of it slowing down. In fact, now there's different phishing campaigns related to other life and significant events that are taking place at this point in the year. Why does this matter? Companies of all sizes have been impacted, whether you're a small business or whether you're a large enterprise. In fact, large organizations have been impacted probably the most based on the huge spikes in DNS volume that we have been seeing starting in early July. No surprise, North America has been a key target of this malicious activity, as you can see evidenced by this particular graphic. So we are all dealing with this new reality, the reality of applications moving to the cloud alongside your data, infrastructure, user identities, networks being transformed, branch offices being turned upside down, connected directly to the internet. Why does this matter? And what does this mean? So I don't know about you, but when I think about my own activity, not only this year, but dating back for the last few years as a product manager, I use a ton of SaaS applications. I don't always ask, admittedly, for our IT department's permission to use those applications. I have the ability as an employee, whether I was contracting or a full-time employee across organizations that I've worked with in Silicon Valley, frankly, over the last 10 years in product management, to make use of these cloud applications. I'm working on a product spec. I'm working on Jira tickets. I'm working on a flow diagram using Lucidchart. Name your particular SaaS application. I can install it, use that application, oftentimes without that vetting from IT, oftentimes without even being on the VPN. Once again, why does that matter of it? Well, it's risk. Users like myself can install and use those applications on our own without that vetting. They can effectively give access scopes and unprecedented access to those said applications without really realizing it. There's also this very interesting phenomenon around tenant restrictions that you may be familiar with. I could use my G Suite applications personally and use some of those in some of the startups that I've worked with, frankly, in a corporate environment, and those could get mixed up, and I might not realize that I'm sharing something from a personal domain or my personal, say, G Drive account. And so these are all use cases that we think of from a product management standpoint, but ultimately they result in security concerns and risk, not being protected by the traditional security stack that you may have built up, the biggest tower that you may have built up. So once again, this is leading, all in all, to gaps in visibility and protection. And we all know that the attackers are not sitting idly by waiting for you. They are looking for the path of least resistance. They are looking for the holes. They're looking for the slip-ups in your endpoints and in your remote workers, especially. So let's take a look at a few more statistics around this. We partnered with one of the research firms that you may be familiar with, ESG, to take a look and validate some of the trends in the market, the customer perceptions, the current technology consumption that's taking place. So there's some interesting things here. First and foremost, applications moving to the cloud, we've touched on that. Number of mobile or remote workers increasing, we've also touched on that. Let's take a look at branch office adoption of direct internet access or direct cloud access, DIA or DCA, as it's often referred to. As you may know, MPLS is really expensive and broadband internet service is cheap. So many organizations, like perhaps yourselves, are re-architecting their network to use MPLS for only critical applications. That might be a voice or a video, and then connecting directly to the internet for everything else. There's also this branch transformation taking place in terms of the refresh, especially in terms of adoption of SD-WAN technology. So based on this research, we are seeing that shift. We are seeing the branch transformation. We're also seeing that it's not a trivial thing to solve. So it takes quite some time to be able to go through that process, as you can see here from that 42% branch office security deployment statistic. Beyond that, the amount of remote workers that are out there effectively means there is that new attack vector that is a path of least resistance to infiltrate the organization. So where does Cisco Umbrella come in? How can we help you? Let's talk a little bit more about that. Cisco Umbrella is effectively a cloud security solution that is built on its foundation as DNS layer security. And we'll talk about that in more detail. But ultimately, it includes more than just DNS layer security. DNS layer security is very easy to set up and deploy. It effectively is pointing your DNS from your internal DNS or DHCP servers to the Umbrella Global Network. Many of our customers can do this in a span of 15, 20 minutes to within an hour. And that is not a claim. That is something that is a reality many of our customers experience. Having this functionality, all the functionality that you see here on the slide, in a single platform is important because ultimately it helps you to reduce time, money, and resources previously used for deployment, configuration, integration tasks. Equally as important here is the flexibility to deploy what is needed by locations or users. You want to protect on-network, off-network, various endpoints. You want to go into deeper inspection from a standpoint of a secure web gateway and solve for proxying use cases. Let me give you an example. You might have headquarters, pretty secure. You're familiar with the workers there and where they are. You have a new acquisition. You have a branch location. You may want to proxy the traffic in that environment and block particular applications from being surfaced. You may have a need for granular IP controls, and a cloud-delivered firewall solution comes in. You may want to scan and monitor for PHI or PII. A cloud access security broker solution perhaps comes into play here. And ultimately, you may have incident response teams that want to dive into the details, the live threat intelligence. You may want to leverage a product like Cisco Investigate to be able to do that, which is our interactive threat intel. We also bring this all together with something called Cisco SecureX, which is available to you as a security business customer for free. It's built into the experience of all of our Cisco security products, and it connects data from across your Cisco security portfolio and your third-party tools into this infrastructure that unifies the visibility, the automation, and ultimately strengthens your security. Let's dive a little bit more into DNS security. Domain name system security, many people refer to it as the phone book of the internet. Every single domain maps to an IP address. And believe it or not, there's a lot of cost savings associated with this. Once again, research tells us 1 in 3 reported breaches could have actually been controlled by DNS technology. And that's a savings of somewhere between 100 to 200 billion global loss savings that could have been prevented simply by deploying DNS security technology. Effectively, this is a untapped gold mine, and not everyone's using it. Granted, we have a ton of customers. There's competitors that have customers that use DNS security, but it's still something that is not always top of mind. Oftentimes, we refer to it as an added layer of security beyond your traditional perimeter security. So don't just take my word for it. Let's take a look at a few key examples of how this has helped customers that are small, medium, and large. The first example I have here is Farm Credit, a Mid-America retail location, as you can see here. About 1,300 employees across 80 retail locations, as is pointed out here. And to me, what was most interesting about this particular case study that we did is their need to keep customer data secure. And ultimately, what they found the impact of the Cisco Umbrella solution was the ability to respond to threats faster, right? So improve their visibility into overall events by blocking those threats early with DNS layer security before that IP connection is made, before the file execution is made, which is effectively what DNS security does. You block those threats, phishing, malware, command and control attacks, you name it. And so they saw a huge, in fact, I had to take a double take on this when I saw the statistic. They saw almost an 800% increase in security blocks as a result of deploying the technology. That is significant. Another case study here is of Avena. So this would be more of a medium-sized business, 10,000 employees. And what I thought was very interesting about this is the fact that Avena is made up, as you can see here, of a lot of consultants working outside of the office. Now, we do a lot of customer studies, something we'll call the customer advisory board a couple of times a year. So when we had our own customers coming into our offices here in, say, the Bay Area and talking with us, we had a lot of similar firms telling us, Rohit, you can't believe how much work gets done outside the office, in coffee shops, through our consultants, through our contract workers. And this resonates with me, and it's shown here in the Avena case study. So protecting these users on and off the network is paramount. And Umbrella allows us to do that in a way that's easy to deploy and simple to manage effectively. That is the quote that is provided here by Joseph. You can see the senior director on the infrastructure side. That is something we take to heart every day. In the cloud security solution that we look to build for our customers, we talk about building integrated solutions that are easy to deploy and simple to manage. Going back to what I said earlier, DNS security through Umbrella is effectively pointing your DNS to an internal DNS or DHCP server to the Umbrella global network, and you're off and running. Alternatively, you can use a network device integration through, say, a Cisco router like an ISR or various Wi-Fi access points. But ultimately, you could do this in a matter of minutes, not days, not weeks, not months. Let's take a look at a large enterprise and how they're dealing with this. And this is in the medical space with Memorial Hermann. In this case, they have over 20,000 users. And what's interesting to me about this particular use case is the fact, not only the fact that we reduce their events, which is something that hopefully you're recognizing is an impact that we have, the reduction in the number of alerts, the reduction in the number of events that you actually see, but they were able to, through their incident response team, investigate things much faster. So this refers back to what I mentioned earlier, which is part of the Cisco Umbrella suite, and one of the options we have available to you is something called Cisco Umbrella Investigate, our live threat intelligence platform. This allows you effectively to go in, search under domains, look at all sorts of who-is records, co-occurrence models, what we know about the relationship of that domain to other malicious domains, why it was blocked, a pivot into our advanced malware protection and sandboxing environment. So you get a lot more statistics and forensics effectively around why threats are being blocked or perhaps why they were blocked. And that's something that you can then go forth and investigate, as the name implies. So that's effectively what this particular customer saw. All right, so I want to wrap up here and leave some time for questions. What I want to point out here is the fact that with our enterprise solution, you have a lot of options, right? So let's summarize. With Umbrella, you have a solution that is delivered in the cloud. There's no hardware, nothing to install, and no software to manually update. Because we use the domain name system or DNS technology, it's your primary mechanism to get traffic to our platform. Forward your traffic to us, change one setting in your network devices, you're off and running. Now, beyond that, we can protect all devices, even those that you don't own. So by pointing your external DNS request to the IP address of our global network, you can not only avail of the integrations with said routers, like the Cisco routers I talked about earlier, or wireless access points, but you can also integrate with the Umbrella APIs, right? So that is also an option available to you where you simply upgrade to the latest network device software and configure the connection via the Umbrella API. Now you might be wondering, what about, Rohit, the off-network protection that you keep referring to? Well, there's a few different options here. If you are one of the 180 million users using Cisco AnyConnect, you can simply enable the Umbrella roaming security module to protect users when the VPN is off. If you're not a Cisco AnyConnect user, there is a lightweight standalone agent that works within the VPN, and it's got over more than a million deployments at this point. So our roaming client is a virtual bump in the wire, I'd say, for every internet connection. It's transparent to your users, doesn't cause any latency or performance issues, and you still get the visibility and off-network protection you're looking for. And finally, off-network mobile coverage, we have that as well through the Cisco Security Connector. So we have you covered in a variety of different means, regardless of those endpoints and where they are on and off the network. So what are the next steps that you can take? I would encourage you, if you haven't already, schedule a demo, sign up for a free trial, go to signup.umbrella.com. You'll see a 14-day free trial and you're off and running. Request a code through some sales teams, and there it is. You have access to this rich data, this platform that we continue to invest in, that we continue to use to leverage and uncover emerging threats so you don't have to worry about them and you can go off and solve the problems that you solve best. So with that, I'd like to wrap up. And once again, thank you for the opportunity.